Welcome to another edition of House of Horns. My name is Victor Corona, aka Victor Producer, and joining me, as always, is my co-host, my compa, your compa, Gilbert Manzano, who's an NFL staff writer for Sports Illustrated. Gilbert, we've gotten through the off season. We went through free agency, the draft, OTAs, training camp. Are you ready to motivate us and give us a motivating speech to get us through this season, Gilbert?
No, I have nothing to offer in terms of motivation. I'm not your person for that. Maybe Robert Sala from Hard Knocks could get you motivated there. And then you actually discouraged me by making me remember OTAs and off-season program. Who cares? Like one of the worst things that I hate as a reporter is being out there in April, a week before the draft. I'm like, why are we out here? Why are people practicing? But enough with the negativity. We're here, week one of the NFL season. Rams against the Seahawks, NFC West clash. So I'm excited for that. And that's my motivational speech. Just be excited.
Yes, we can always count on Gilbert to bring down the mood here.
There you go.
But we have a lot, going on in this episode for you guys. We have the latest on the Cooper Kupp injury in news and notes. Plus, Gilbert gives us his takeaways from his visit to Rams practice on Wednesday. And plus, player matchups to watch, storylines for both teams, keys to the game, and our predictions. But before we get started, Gilbert, what are some things that people should check out that we have going on the Compas on the Beat Network?
Yeah, no, it's definitely plenty of options. And like you just mentioned, you laid out the whole rundown for today. And it just got me thinking about last year and how much fun we had, going through the matchups, storylines. Unfortunately, some injuries. We'll get into the Cooper Cup thing. Don't worry about that. We will get there. And it's a bummer to start off, but, it's an opportunity for the younger guys. I sound like a coach now. But yeah, just hearing all your play by play of the rundown, I was like, okay, cool. It's really football season here. But yeah, if you get a chance, please check out the entire catalog of Compas on the Beat Network. By the way, it was awesome to see all the comments that we got for our recap of the 53-man roster of the Rams, and you kept telling me, "Hey, look at that comment, check out that comment." So it's good to see the support here at House of Horns, and it's season 2. So uh, if you like what we're doing here, check out Compas on the Beat, the YouTube, subscribe. Even if you don't want to watch it, just hit that subscribe button because it goes a long ways for us to grow the network here and do more things of House of Horns. Uh, Obviously, if you don't care about the Chargers, but if you have Keenan Allen, Justin Herbert, Mike Williams in your fantasy team, check out What's Up Bolts with Fernando and Dan. If you like combat sports, boxing, MMA, or pro wrestling, check out Combat Compas. So we have plenty of options, but definitely hit up the main channel, Compas on the Beat. We just had an interview with Quentin Johnston. Maybe we could get a Rams player in the near future. But that's all NFL right there and a bunch of random content. I know you and I here, Vic, we're straight to the point. We talk about football, but we joke around over there too. And we'll make some laughs here happen too as well.
Yeah, and we have some Rams content on there as well, and I just, as you talked about, thank you for the new subscribers. We've gone over, I think it was around 40 to 50 new subscribers with the last two videos that we've done. So we really appreciate that. We continue to grow, and it's all thanks to you guys, to the viewers and the listeners of this, House of Horns. As everybody keeps commenting, I was telling you, I think we're gonna start like our own little group here, Gilbert. It's gonna be called our Horns Up crew because everybody keeps saying horns up at the end of their comments. So we really appreciate that.
Yeah,
But
maybe a newsletter where we get people, we send the videos and you guys respond with all that. I like that.
yeah, that's we'll call them the horns up crew. But lastly, Gilbert, you have an engagement question for our viewers and listeners. Go ahead and
Yeah.
hit us up with that.
Yeah, I think we forgot the engagement question last week, and it's something we like to do where, from the top, we give you a question and just hit the comments up, maybe pause it and then comment and then get back to the show and check it out. But an easy one to start off here, week one is well, I'm already forgetting. Oh, there we go. It is easy one.
There we
What
go.
will be the Rams' final record after the 2023 regular season? They start off with the Seahawks on Sunday, which is funny because they ended last regular season in Seattle. They're going back for week one. So think about the Seattle matchup. Think about the 49ers. Think about the Bengals, the Eagles, the Colts, the Cardinals. I think that's the first 5 or 6. It's a brutal schedule, but lay it all down figure it out, and get in the comments and let me know what's your Rams final prediction for the record in 2023. And stick around the show here to the end. Unless you want to fast forward, you're so eager to find out. Victor and I will give you our predictions for the final record for the Rams. So check out the comments, write them up right there. And if you're in audio, we also have audio. We don't forget about that. Apple Podcast, Spotify. Check us out for your long drive. It is LA, so a lot of traffic. So if you're listening on the audio, when you get home or whenever, it's a good time to get on your phone or your laptop. Get in the comments as well.
Yeah, that's we have a lot going on this episode, and so we want to go ahead and get this started. We're already about 5 minutes in, and you were down in Thousand Oaks on Wednesday. You got to check out Rams practice. What were you able to get for us for news and notes? And of course, the big thing we missed, we haven't talked about, is you send me a text message and you're like, well, things aren't going to start well for the Rams. We're back to the same thing we kind of talked about last season, and that's injuries. And first, we got the news of the Cooper Kupp visiting a what is it,
Specialist.
a specialist, hamstring specialist in Minnesota. So go ahead, Gilbert.
Yeah, we were debating over the weekend should we do a video or not, and it's that time of year where a lot of the insiders have information early, but I like to wait for as a beat reporter in me, I like to wait for the actual head coach, hear from teammates and see the actual injury report to see what's going on, and yeah, it is pretty serious. Sean McVay touched on it on Monday, and then Wednesday when we're recording this today, Wednesday, he officially ruled out Cooper Kupp. And you could tell Sean McVay didn't want to get too much into it. Like he knows it's a serious thing, but they're still in that phase where like they don't really know what's going on. And it happened last year with Matthew Stafford with the spine injury. Remember, like we couldn't get answers. Like, okay, is he gonna come back? Is he not? And like, yeah, we're still trying to figure it out here. So just judging off of that example, it's not a good look. And then they asked Sean McVay, is IR a possibility? And he's like, yeah, it's a chance. And you know what? Honestly, I'm tired of talking about it. I want to move on to these young guys here and focus on them. So that all to me feels like they're expecting the worst. And obviously the worst, I'm not gonna say that. The worst will be season ending. They're gonna take on more precaution. And when you do that, it usually tends to be IR. So I'm not trying to be the negative Nancy here, but just judging from Sean McVay, it could be multiple weeks. And if it's going to be multiple weeks, then maybe you consider IR. But the tricky part is when, you can't use up IR spots too many times. So you go on there one time, you can't really go back either. So is it worth to use right now too? So all these things they're probably debating right now.
Yeah, and it's not a good look. I know we had our fantasy draft over the weekend, and I know I've heard a lot of people who are concerned about this injury. He's we don't know. That's the thing with hamstrings. I know I've seen some things where it could last 4 weeks, it could go 8 weeks. We just don't know. I mean, one of the things that I felt good about going into the season before the injury news was the fact that he actually participated in the scrimmage against the Broncos, and he was doing really well. He was beating defenders, and I think he even scored a touchdown. And he had separation on his defenders, and so I felt good about it. And then next thing the news breaks about him going and seeing the specialist, and that's when I kind of had a bit of a concern. And now it's up in the air when he comes back. I know McVay kind of was downplaying that, as you talked about, that he's ruled out for week one. But at this point, as and better than I do with the IR. But it's do you, as you said, do you sit him for the first 4 weeks, or do you at this point you just kind of want to make sure he's okay? So it's a tough situation that the Rams find themselves already, Gilbert.
Yeah, this is where I'm rusty for my week one IR, I guess, information because I know that there's a certain amount that you can't do. Most years it's two, but then they keep changing it back and forth. Ever since the whole COVID year, it's like, okay, what do we like? What do we don't like? So, that's my bad on me. I'll do my research, but I just know it's definitely not more than two. So, or it could be just one. If you go on IR, you come back, but once you go back in IR, you're done for the year, and you don't want to do, maybe use that up. But if you feel like you got to, and you need to have some flexibility for the roster, then you got to do it. And then when that second time comes, you just don't put the guy in IR, and it's always like weird because they're always on the injury report, but they're gonna be ruled out every single week. So that is a tricky part there, and you know, we are talking to Matthew Stafford about the injury to Cooper Kupp, and by the way, like I don't know if anybody has asked Sean McVay, but like, was it a mistake to bring him out for that Denver Broncos scrimmages? Was it too soon? And I guess he didn't want to point the fingers, but like at that point, it's like, why come back for a scrimmage? And I get you want to be in a rhythm, you want to know what's going on with the hammy, but with hamstrings, man, because they're so unpredictable, why not just wait it out? So that's a question we could ask ourselves. But going to real quick to Matthew Stafford, he's like, yeah, man, like people are so worried about fantasy football. I don't care about the fantasy football part. I care about the human Cooper Kupp, and you know he was talking about how like he was trying to lift them up. Like, hey, take your time. It's okay. When you were not out there for training camp for what, a month. Stafford said he got to build a relationship, and we'll get into the comments about Stafford and the young guys. But he said everything's all good, and like he built a chemistry with those guys when Cooper Kupp was out, so they feel good about that part at least. But it does make you wonder, why were you even out there for the Denver scrimmages?
Yeah, and that's a great point by you, because I thought about that when, as soon as the news broke, and in my mind I'm like, why was he even out there? But just wait it out, and it just feels that the Rams are doing things differently this season just because of what happened last season. And I think maybe they pushed him, or he pushed himself, because he felt like he needed to be out there, at the beginning of the season. And I think that's part of it as well, and unfortunately, things like this happen. Injuries with football are always going to happen, and it sucks that it happened to one of the best players on the Rams. But he's not the only injury, right, Gilbert? There's other guys
Yeah.
who have been ruled out.
Yeah, we got well, he's not gonna be the backup this week, but he was supposed to be the number two. Is Stetson Bennett, the rookie out of Georgia? He is dealing with a shoulder injury, and it looks like he's not gonna play. You got Hunter Long, the tight end who was involved in the Jalen Ramsey trade, still dealing with an injury, and it sounded like a lot of things with his leg, thigh,
I heard
uh,
a
tissue.
thigh issue.
Yeah,
Yes,
so I don't know what's going on with Hunter Long, but he hasn't been around much, and at this point, it's kind of like was he even involved in Jalen Ramsey trade? Where did he come from? Obviously, they got a third round pick out of it, and that's more important. But I want to see Hunter Long because he's a good blocker, and that really kind of helps you out in the running game. But to not have him, that's not going to hurt. I mean, that's going to hurt. I probably should say Stetson Bennett, and having him won't hurt. That probably won't hurt because he is a backup, and he was really struggling. Let's keep it real. We mentioned it last week or a couple weeks ago, where like he had a rocky preseason, and then Sean McVay said that he's been dealing with the shoulder injury for a few weeks now. And I'm like, is that an excuse to say that that's why he played poorly or whatever's going on? But clearly Stetson Bennett wasn't ready to be the backup quarterback number two. You're not ready to be a number two in the NFL when you're playing that poorly as a rookie. Yeah, he's older, experienced, but Brett Rippon was kind of be your guy. I felt like regardless, anyways. Uh, and then Sean McVay mentioned that there's a possibility of getting a number three quarterback. So if Rippon is not your guy, then get somebody else out there on the market. But they didn't search out for like a PJ Walker or well, I think Como McCoy is still available, but it sounds like he has some offers until he gets healed up from his injury. So there are options at quarterback, but at this kind of point in the stage, you're probably like, you know what, just go with Rippon.
yeah, no, and I was just gonna add, just put Stenson Bennett on injured reserve, and then redshirt him this season. I mean, I don't see, and keep Mark Rippon on the practice squad. That way, you free up, kind of like what the New England Patriots are doing. That's one way to kind of get around the loophole with having a backup quarterback on the roster, on your 53-man roster. But that's for another. That's something we can talk about later on. What else? What else? I know I'm intrigued by this story, because that was the other big news we talked about, and that was the Stafford and what his wife said on her podcast. So what was I know the cup injury took most of the questions from reporters on Wednesday. Was
Yeah.
Stafford and his news number two?
Yeah, I honestly forgot about that storyline because everybody kept asking Stafford about the cup injury. So, shout out to Gary Klein of the LA Times for having that in his mind still. So after all the cup injury questions were over with, he's like, "Hey, this is the first time we've talked to you since the Kelly Stafford podcast." Quote, how do you feel about that? Do you feel like there's some kind of disconnect there with the younger guys? And Stafford's like, you know what? I was gonna have some fun with it. I was gonna come out here with a newspaper and some old man glasses, but I couldn't find the newspaper. And me being a former newspaper writer, I took that to heart because you can't find newspapers anymore, and you can't
Yeah,
even find magazines. They're also hard too.
yeah,
Working at SI, I'm looking for magazines and things like that. So he couldn't do the joke. Now, that would have been hilarious coming out with the what do you call it, little old spectacle thingies, or whatever they're called. I forgot what he said. And then the newspaper, he just put up with the press conference and showing it off. Hey, people, how you doing? And then, but he didn't do that. But he didn't want to go too much into it. But he kept saying, "I love my teammates. I get along with them. We're connected. We're fine." And I wish we would have asked them, like, is it true that they go straight on their phones after meetings and they avoid you? But he could tell he didn't want to talk about it too much, and he's like I think somebody asked him like, "Hey, did things get lost in translation between you and your wife?" I'm like, I don't. That's is that even possible? I don't. You talk every day, and he just
yeah,
starts laughing and shaking his head, and that to me feels like he is being a good husband for the podcast. Like, hey, I got people talking, they're watching or clicking or listening, whatever. I'm just gonna shake my head, and because all publicity is good publicity, and I'm gonna just tell my younger teammates. And I think he doesn't even need to address it because like he is a captain. He's a Super Bowl winning quarterback. You don't have to say anything at this point. But it kind of felt like I'm just gonna go along with it because she has a podcast and we need her to be doing well with that too.
yeah. And I understand where he's coming from. As the older guy in a group, I totally understand. I've been there. You're trying to relate to your. I mean, I don't have the situation where it's way younger and you got to relate, you got to lead. He's on a whole different level there, and it's totally understandable where he's coming from. And I just think that we're waiting for the season, and this just blew up. It was something. Shout out to Rams Turf Times, who did all the work and then had their work taken away from by the big outlets out there, and it blew up. Because the season isn't here yet, and we need things to talk about. And that's unfortunately that's what happens in the sports world that we live in now, with this much where we need content daily. And he unfortunately got into that news cycle, but I'm glad that he talked about it and he had fun with it. I just wanted to add a couple of more notes, Gilbert. I just want to on Wednesday it was announced that Nick Bosa is now the uh, record setter for defensive players at $34 million annually, which beats Aaron Donald, who held the record for a couple of years at 31.67 a season. And then the other thing I kind of wanted to point out, just a random thing. If you're positive, if you want positivity when it comes to the Rams, Sean McVay is 16-4 in the month of September, but unfortunately they have a tough 3 games in September against the Seahawks, the 49ers, and the Bengals. So at least you know that McVay has a good record in September, and he'll look to add to that 16-4 record. And with that, do you have anything else to add, Gilbert?
Yeah, well, I guess in terms of the defensive side, Aaron Donald no longer the highest paid defensive player in the league, and I thought I wouldn't see the day. Well, I guess I did because Nick Bosa was next, and he's such a like. If there's one player that's gonna surpass Aaron Donald money on defense, it's gonna be Nick Bosa. Sorry, Chris Jones, it might not be you, but if you're at home, Chris Jones, and you're seeing how much money Nick Bosa's getting, you're just saying, you know what, just give me something below that, and I'm back, KC. But it's not a KC show. And sticking to the NFC West here with Nick Bosa, like, yeah, he got 5 years, $107 million, $170 million, 122 million guaranteed, 34 million per year. So that beats out Aaron Donald, which is around a little under $32 million per year. And then I think for the Donald one was like maybe 2 or 3 years. So this is over 5 years. Nick Bosa obviously much younger, considered the best defensive player in the league. But yeah, it was funny because last year covering the Rams every day, it's kind of like I keep taking videos of Aaron Donald messing with their practice sled, and I'm like, I am so fascinated by him destroying this thing, but then I can't post it every single day. But it's a new season, new week. I got more video of that, and I started thinking to myself, I'm like, like is he still the best defensive player in the league? So I'm like, I'm watching the best defensive player in the NFL in front of me, and I started debating about it. And then is it Nick Bosa? Is it him? But he's older and he got hurt, so I bet for him he's really motivated about
Oh yeah.
being kind of out now, and then also now not being the highest paid defender. So maybe a little storyline right there for week 2 between Nick Bosa and Aaron Donald. But that definitely caught my attention because I like kind of seeing the money and salaries and who's getting paid and who's not. So shout out to Nick Bosa, but I'm sure Aaron Donald is very motivated about that.
Oh yeah, and that'll set up our next week's episode. That'll be something that we'll have to add on there, and yeah, like especially with these two, it was well deserved for Nick Bosa and Aaron Donald. I know I'm sure there's I don't know I don't know when you guys will have access to Aaron Donald, but
I'm
I
gonna
would
say
want to know.
Thursday speaks. Well, yeah,
Yeah,
we'll be done recording by then. But yeah.
yeah, I would want to know if someone asked him about that. I don't think he cares. I think he's just going to be motivated by it. But are you ready to get into this matchup between the Rams and the Seahawks? So before we kind of go in depth into it, let me just give you a bit of a history between these two teams. The Rams and the Seahawks have played 51 games. Against each other, counting the regular season and the playoffs. The Seahawks have an overall record of 27 and 24 against the Rams. As you know, Gilbert covering this team last season, the Seahawks swept the Rams last season twice in week. Was it a week? It was week 13 and week
Yeah.
18. So week 13 it was 27 to 23 at SoFi, and 19 to 16 an overtime win in the finale week 18. Uh, and before that, like the Rams in the last 10 games, the Rams have a 6-4 record in the last 10 meetings dating back to 2018. So let's get into Seahawks and Rams and Seahawks storylines. What let's have you get it started, Gilbert.
Yeah, we were having a good conversation or somewhat of a debate on the Seahawks and how good they're gonna be, and it sounds like you're gonna jump ship, but like I'm gonna stick it out. I think the Seahawks are gonna be a very good team in the NFC. I think last year they really like put on the blueprint here, and and before I kind of I do like a comparison here, I'll brag about the Seahawks. Hopefully that's okay with people at House of Horns, but they had a very impactful rookie class a year ago. Rick Woolen, a couple of tackles that really contributed for them. Charles Cross, Lucas was the other one. Uh,
Abraham Lucas.
Abraham Lucas and Kenneth Walker the third, obviously, and a couple other players too. So, that really set the tone for this year when they were going to be the afterthought. Remember, and everybody was saying, I said it, the Rams are going to be really good, and then the NFC West, and it was flipped, and it was the other way around. But the Rams, played the Seahawks pretty tough last year. But the thing this year, they don't have the Bobby Wagner. They do have Ernest Jones, and we'll see how he does. I'm excited to see that, by the way. And that's kind of fitting, right? Ernest Jones, finally getting his moment to be a starter, going up against a guy who I'm not gonna say hindered, but he made him wait one more year, Bobby Wagner, and he learned so much in that year. So I want to see if that kind of paid off for him. But going to the Seahawks this year, then they I think they had another very talented rookie class, and you get a Devin Witherspoon and a Jackson Smith and Jigba. I want to say Derek Hall was their other pick that they had. Zach Charbonnet was the running back. Hall was edge rusher. So that's four guys right there that make an impact. I know Devin Witherspoon might not play this week, and you have Witherspoon and Rick Woolen and a couple other guys in that secondary. That's going to be trouble when you don't have Cooper Kupp. But I think I'm a believer in Geno Smith. I think that's a good offense there with DK Metcalf. Jackson Smith and Jigba. And I know their run defense was a problem a year ago, but they still made the wild card playoffs with that problem, and they added a is it Draymond Jones from the Broncos.
Jeremy Jones, yes.
He's not the best run stopper, but he's a very good pass rusher. Jerron Reed's an older guy, but he was brought in to kind of help out. I don't know about that going back to like an older player, but the comparison I want to make is, a year ago, this is good for the Rams. A year ago, nobody counted on the Seahawks doing anything in this division or making the playoffs. Now the roles are reversed. That nobody's counting on the Rams to do anything. Some people are somewhat because they do have, Donald Cupp and McVay and Stafford, but for the most part, everybody's counting out the Rams. Maybe they're going to tank for Caleb Williams. But now that's the beauty of football, right? Like it could be like you never know. And you always bring it up, Vic. Like it could be 5 or 6 teams that surprise. And last year it was the Seahawks. So if you're a Rams fan and you're kind of feeling uneasy and you want some motivation, there you go. Motivation. Look
Yeah,
at the
there you
Seahawks from 2022 when everybody count them out. So, that's kind of the comparison I make. But to end on this long topic about the Seahawks, I like how they went back to back really great rookie class. I shouldn't say great for 2023 just yet, but on paper they look pretty good.
Yeah, and that takes me right to my point because like as you mentioned, I asked this question when we on Compas on the beat, and I said, are the Seahawks the third best team in the NFC during this offseason just because of the rookie class that they another rookie class. My biggest, as and I've kind of gone away from it. I believed in the Seahawks. I like what they were doing, and I still do. I just have some questions, and I think part of it is can they meet expectations, playoff expectations? We see teams who've been able to elevate, after making the playoffs, and we've seen people just fall. Now they have a really good coach in Pete Carroll who is going to motivate these guys. He's a 72-year-old who's out there throwing the ball to receivers. And so you have that. Like I said, I have questions here. Have the just doing some research on the Seahawks. Half of the rookie class already has been injured during this offseason, and so that's not something you want to see. You have, as you talked about, Devin Witherspoon with the hamstring, Jackson Smith and Jigba, who's gonna play. It sounds like, but he had wrist surgery. You have defensive tackle Cameron Young with the calf injury, Mike Morris with the shoulder. You have their center and a running back, Kenny McIntosh. So, I mean, this is what happens when you're trying to make the playoffs again is you start having injuries, and that's one of the things you try to avoid. Another thing is, is there that depth on defense? And my biggest thing with the Seahawks, as I've kind of jumped off the train there, has been, or the bandwagon, I should say, has been I still have concerns about their run defense. And I like the fact that they brought back Bobby Wagner. That's good, but we don't know what's going to happen with Jamal Adams. He's has been ruled out for this game against the Rams, which is good for the Rams. But as I said, I still have a lot of concerns with this team. I understand the expectations, and then you know, we always see this with some quarterbacks. Do they regress or do they get better or do they stay the same? And we had a lot of questions about Geno Smith. They brought him back. We didn't know if he was going to be on this team, and now we don't know if it's if he's going to take the next step or is he going to regress, Gilbert. So I just
Yeah.
want to get your thoughts on Geno Smith.
Yeah, that's like the tough part because like it's kind of like okay, so you finally did it for a year, can you do it again? And that's how the question marks is. And just actually reading some of my colleagues' work, Albert Breer, and he kind of put up a good point saying like he had a crappy hand with the Jets there, and then he just kind of, fell out of I guess out of the picture because crappy Jets, and then they fire everybody, and then a new coaching staff comes in and a new GM. Oh, we didn't get you, and you get out of the picture, you get punched by by a teammate, and you kind of do some soul searching, and then I actually got to cover him when he was with the Chargers, and he was a backup for Phillip Rivers, and goes to be a backup for Russell Wilson. And too many times, like how many cases are out there of Geno Smith guys were like they weren't ready to play. It wasn't their time. They weren't mature. and they weren't putting in the work ethic. And then like maybe you get some time to pause, and you're still like maybe in your late 20s, you're still young and in your prime, and oh, now you get an opportunity to kind of shine. And to the credit to the Seahawks, like honestly, I don't know what was happening to the Seahawks in their minds. Like, were they going to tank and like, hey, let's go with a Geno, or they saw him every day in practice. Hey, this guy's ready. He's been working hard. So maybe not because he was competing with Drew Lock. But I kind of go back to like he's still young, and watching some of those games, like this guy was slinging it, man. Like he had, some great games where they were having some good shootouts, but he didn't play that well against the Rams though. So that could be a point there for the Rams because those are two very close games, and it's funny because I think that team hit a rookie wall with all the young pieces because by the time
Yep.
they got to the Rams, the young guys were kind of fading, and I think Gino had to keep it together, and he was throwing some picks every now and then, and it wasn't his best, but maybe you're right, Vic, because they kind of were kind of fading in the end. But I'm gonna say to answer your question, I do believe in Geno Smith. I think putting all those pieces together, well, okay, maybe he's finally getting his fair shake. He's making the most of it, seizing the opportunity, not making an excuse for what happened with the Jets there, and then being a backup. So I like him as a quarterback. Seeing him with DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett, and now you have the rookie Jackson Smith and Jigba. I really like the offense, but you're right. That defense could be a problem. And then a lot of rookies again. And then also they're not even ready. And then Jamal Adams, who got traded for 2 first-round picks, not being ready. Their linebacker came through. I think Brooks. I'm blanking on the first name. Oh, Jordan Brooks. Because I actually spoke to Pete Carroll on my training camp tour. And he's like, we gotta have our linebacker back. He's really good. So he made it back because he knows how bad the run defense was. So maybe I could agree saying that maybe they won't be a top 3 NFC team. I actually did pick them to be in the NFC championship game but that was when I was told to pick maybe a couple of weeks ago. I was hoping Devin Witherspoon will be healthy, but that's the thing too. Like you can't just look at the injuries right now. Like, it's a long season.
Yep.
Maybe he comes
It's a
back and he's
marathon.
healthy, but maybe you're right. Maybe they are more of a wild card again than maybe like a top 3 team.
Yeah, and it'll be interesting to see what happens with this team. Like as you said, they got to face the Rams towards the end of the season. Now they get them right off the bat, and we'll see how good this team is right off the bat if they meet expectations or not. I mean, they get the Rams at home. And so we'll see if they're ready for prime time, as a lot of people like to say when you have so many expectations and the Seahawks. I feel like they've uh, you know experts or people have put a lot of expectations on this team to be one of the top teams in a you know heavy NFC, or what is it, heavy top NFC. There's it's pretty much everybody's saying it's the Eagles and 49ers, and then try to figure out who the number 3 team is, because we don't know yet. And so, but moving on, we have our player matchups. Gilbert, I'm gonna have you give us what are you excited about from in terms of a player matchup in this game between the Seahawks and Rams.
Yeah, so I think you're gonna go offense. So I go defense, and again, when I was staring at Aaron Donald do his practice routine there, I was like, hey, I'm finally gonna see Aaron Donald with this young defense here, and it won't be a scrimmage or a training camp or wherever the heck that is in the summer. This is a real game. Young guys are finally gonna face real talent, real schemes, great quarterbacks. So look at me calling Geno Smith a great quarterback. He's a good quarterback. I don't know about great, but he's good. But to be tested, Trey Tomlinson, the rookie cornerback, who really caught my eye when I watched him going up against Devontae Adams 1-on-1. Now, do the Seahawks pick on him because he's smaller and you got DK Metcalf? Where do the Rams put him? They also got Tyler Lockett, and again, we mentioned it looks like Jackson Smith and Jigba is going to be back, but at what, like full strength? Can he catch the ball with a wrist that just had surgery? We don't know, but there's just so many options. Like, okay, what do you do with Trey Thompson, who's so young? I think Kobe Durant's going to be the guy that's going to be kind of all over the place, so he won't really shadow anybody. So I'm intrigued to see how they play this out because they're so young. But it does help that they have John Johnson as a safety. Because I know with Jordan Fuller, he's an experienced guy, but like I haven't seen enough for him. John Johnson makes me feel better about the secondary. But sticking to Trey Tomlinson to get real work in an NFL game, with Aaron Donald doing the pass rush thing. You know, say they don't get a pass rush, does that really affect Trey Tomlinson in the back end? So to really cover, so I don't know, Victor, if Njigba's healthy and he's legit, this trio might be the best trio of wide receivers in the league, and that's a big test for a rookie like Trey Tomlinson, who was a 6th round pick out of TCU.
Yeah, and you're right. And I keep going back to, the comparison with this team, this Rams team, to what the Seahawks were last season, and those late end, you know, um, draft picks have to hit. And Trent Tomlinson, kind of like what Kobe Bryant
Yeah,
and Tariq Woolen were to the Seahawks last season. This is where he comes in. I'm kind of surprised you didn't go with Kobe Durant, just because he's going to be the star on that defense, that we saw last season. I'm intrigued to see what happens with this defense, in terms of, we saw that they played, a 3-3, was it a 3-5, was it a 3-3-5 defense, nickel defense, most of the season. That was their personnel on defense under Raheem Morris last season. We've heard that they're going to be more, they've been more aggressive in training camp, in scrimmages. And so I want to see a little bit more of how those cornerbacks, as you talked about, are they more aggressive, especially because they're young. Gilbert, do you
yeah.
think they'll be more aggressive?
Like it is a bigger role for Kobe Durant, and yeah, if you're gonna be more aggressive, man, I don't know, like if you strike out as a pass rush, that puts a lot of pressure on your cornerbacks or DBs, and like you're trying to go in, and then they just beat you up the top when you got Tyler Lockett, who was a really fast wide receiver or a great route runner, and then Jigba just kind of get by you, if you don't get him some space, because he's such a polished route runner. So it's a dangerous game when you try to put more pressure. But again, we have never seen this Raheem Morris, I guess you want to call it his way, because before it was more the Vic Fangio, Brandon Staley scheme. So uh, I'm eager to see that. It's a good storyline. How do you do this, Raheem Moore with this Ram defense, whereas Aaron Donald and a bunch of young guys. So uh, if you don't get the pass rush early, then it's going to be trouble for these young DBs. So, you know, even if you're not blitzing, you still got to get home with 4 guys, because then you're asking a lot of the guys on the back end too. So, I didn't bring up Cody Durant because I seen it. I seen his game last year, and I was impressed. He's a ball hawk. He's a playmaker. Uh, we'll see how he does as in the star, and then and maybe he needs to be a better coverage guy, but he has a nose for the ball and he has a knack for making plays, and I really like that. And he's like this guy. I think it was week 2 where he had that interception. He almost took it back. He missed it, and then he pulled his hamstring on that run. Remember? But that
Yeah.
was week 2 of the league of the season of his rookie year. So that tells you he's fearless and he's a confident guy. So I'm not worried about Cody Durant. And actually, Trey Tomlinson reminds me a lot of him because they're both younger guys who are very competitive and they're feisty.
Yeah, and it's gonna be, like I said, I keep going back to, this defense, because I know there's a lot of, like, so this defense is gonna be terrible. Nobody can name players on outside of Ernest Jones and Aaron Donald. We have, like, I've heard people talk about Bobby Brown. I've heard, a lot of people are gonna get to know us. And I know this game's not gonna be nationally televised. I think the only people who are going to be able to see are going to be regionally in LA and Seattle. So I think as we get uh, some tape on some of these players, and people get to know them, especially once you get to the third game, when it's a Monday night game against the Bengals. I think a lot more people are going to know who these players are. But as of for right now, I think there's a lot of question marks, and rightfully so, because a lot of people haven't seen this defense, and there's a lot of question marks, and rightfully so. But for me, as you talked about, it is on offense, and it's Tyler Higbee. No Cooper Kupp. I would have gone with Puka Nakua, but we don't know where he's gonna play. I don't have anything. I don't have any faith in Van Jefferson, Tutu Atwell. I will say one way that the Rams always kill the Seahawks is on the jet sweep. So look out for that, because apparently the Seahawks have never been under McVay, have never been able to stop the jet sweeps of the Rams. So that'll be something to keep an eye on. But for me, it's Tyler Higbee against the linebackers of the Seahawks and their safeties. No Jamal Adams, as we talked about. I want to see what if Bobby Wagner and Brooks are able to cover him. Um, he had one big game against the Seahawks back in 2019 where he had 7 catches for 116 yards. I mean, he hasn't had a big game against the Seahawks. It just feels like Stafford is going to go to the guy who he trusts the most, and that's Tyler Higbee right now without Cooper Kupp. I don't know what you think.
Yeah, this is one of these things where like you kind of wish Hunter Long was ready so he could be the blocker, and maybe you play some 12 personnel, and you're running the football, and it's gonna be the new scheme for Sean McVay. Now we don't even know what's gonna be the real new scheme for McVay because now he's adjusting on the fly without Cooper Cup, and we won't really get to see what his master plan was. That's kind of the downside there. So, Higby will be heavily involved, and you don't have Long, and I don't know if Davis Allen will play. Would it be one of the 48 guys or 47? You got Bryson Hopkins as well. So that's the other way too. Like if you can't rely on wide receivers, you go ahead to your tight end. So if you're thinking for fantasy, Higby all reliable there to give you 8 to 9 points, and go ahead and take them. But
Yeah.
I want to stick to the wide receivers and what they do, and I was gonna get antsy earlier to talk about Van Jefferson, so it was a good spot right here. And
Go ahead.
it's like he's expected to be the number one guy, and like he's never really been that guy. Like when I know he had that great game against the Raiders, like in Baker Mayfield, he got the game winning touchdown, but he's just always been inconsistent. And maybe this is not fair to say, but when he was younger, like there's a reason when they brought in guys like OBJ because he just wasn't ready. And then when he was supposed to be relied on, he was hurt and he wasn't ready last year. And then he kind of took forever to get going. And remember there was that game in Tampa Bay where he came back and got like one target and didn't do anything. So it's a make or break season for Van Jefferson. And I see people trying to push him for fantasy football, and I'm like, I don't know, man. Like he just, he hasn't really, figured it out. But maybe when he has pressure in a contract year and this is his moment to shine, maybe he could do it. But then Tutu Atwell, I'm kind of out on Tutu. I see flashes, but I don't see the big sample size. So again, another opportunity for him. But part of me feels like if the Rams do somehow find success in this game and maybe they win, I could see a giant story from maybe Jordan Rodriguez, the Athletic, on how they unleash Puka Nakua because he's been that good. Like
Yeah.
I feel more confident in Puka doing something than Van and Tutu, and that's just me kind of like keeping it real from what I've seen the last couple of years out of those guys. But again, he is a rookie. You can kind of expect the guy who's a fifth round pick out of BYU to do something real early. But it would not surprise me if Puga does something here. But again, in terms of Jefferson and Tutu, it's your time. You got to seize it. But a lot of people don't feel confident about that.
And then you have a homecoming for Puka. He went to Washington, and BYU close by. So, I mean, and so I mean, it's kind of a homecoming for Puka Nakua, and I just didn't want to put that much expectations on Puka already, but
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I've seen people pick up Puka over Van Jefferson in fantasy now with the Cooper Cup news. So that should tell you a lot about also what the what some of the how some of the people feel, they if you're if how these fantasy experts feel about this Rams team in terms of Van Jefferson and Puka. So I mean, we'll see. We'll see what happens on Sunday, but that tells you, even us as we're talking about it, we're not the only ones that don't have that much faith in Van Jefferson. Um, let's get to our keys to the game, Gilbert. Just how you feel this game is going to go and how the Rams can win this game against the Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm tired of talking about it, so I'll keep it short. But I gotta see a good pass rush here, and Byron Young and Michael Hoy again, like Van and Tutu. It's your time to shine. You can't just expect Aaron Donald to do everything. And then maybe like we were talking about the Raheem Morris game plan, and I go back to the Super Bowl against the Bengals when he unleashed Ernest Jones to be the blitzer and the extra guy to rush. Will we see more of that? With Ernest Jones there, and And can he help out with, because if you can't get a consistent pass rush with those four guys there, or what, whatever, three or whatever, how many guys you have, but you're gonna have to bring some other guys to help you out, and I think Ernest Jones would be that guy, and that's what gave him some good momentum after his rookie year, what he did with the Bengals. So I want to see that. Like, if you're gonna get risky, because if you don't bring it, then Geno Smith's gonna probably pick you apart. Again, all three guys will be available, so you want to help out your young guys in the back end. Do something. Byron Young, Michael Hoy, obviously, Aaron Donald will do his part, but I want to see Ernest Jones do something. Like I mentioned earlier, like, hey, his mentor Bobby Wagner watching on, man, put on a show for that guy.
Yeah, that'll be great. I mean, that's gonna be. I'm like, is this? I didn't bring it up, but like I was gonna ask, like at one point, just to be funny, it's like, is this a Bobby Wagner revenge game? And
I don't know. I felt like it was like a mutual parting, so maybe. But whenever you want, like, get a motivational thing in your head, play the revenge card.
I'm just glad he went home. I mean,
Yeah.
he's gonna retire a Seahawk and he's gonna go into the Hall of Fame. So, it's a good story. But in terms of the Rams defense, I think if Aaron Donald's gonna get triple team, double team, you need to make sure that Byron Young and Michael Holt get a pass rush going, and you're right on with that, because without that, you either need a good pass rush to help out your young secondary, because we know how dynamic these receivers are. They also have a good tight end, and I always forget about not only Noah Fant, but we always forget. I always forget about Will Disley. Will
Yeah.
Disley is like a fantasy, like, vulture, because he always ends up having like those 2 or 3 games where everybody believes in Will Disley, and I'll let you pick him up, and then he just disappoints, and then you're stuck with Will Disley. So just
No.
yeah,
Stay away from that guy.
yeah, exactly. But yeah, and then for me, just moving over to the offense, you know, I I I was really looking forward to have for the Rams to have Cooper Kupp, and now that he's not there, I kind of talked about um Cam Akers. This is going to be a big Cam Akers, needs to be a big Cam Akers game. Last season, in 2 games against them, I think he rushed for almost 164 yards. He had 2 touchdowns. The 2 touchdowns came in one game, in week 13 at home at SoFi, and then in the finale he rushed. I think he had like 21 carries for 104 yards or something like that. I think it was. Let me
Yeah.
make sure. Let me.
He finished with three straight 100-yard games.
Yeah, so they're gonna need the offensive line to, I know there's been a lot of stories done on Sean McVay's running game and his running style, and I know one of the a couple of people mentioned this in our comments that we had last week. The fact that they brought in m- uh what is the offensive coordinator? I'm drawing a
Mike LaFleur.
Mike LaFleur. Somebody called him Mad. I heard it the other day. I was like, wait, no, it's
That's
Mike.
the Packers. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Um, and I just want to see if they implement the running game that you saw with Shanahan. That's maybe that's why they brought him in. Maybe he wants, as I talked about. They kept 10 offensive linemen. They had 4 tight ends before Hunter Long. Isn't playing in this game, and so I just want to see if he. They're the 11 personnel kings. Sean McVay, that's his thing. 11 personnel. And so you kind of want to see if they run some 12 personnel, if they bring in an extra offensive lineman here and there to help, because you're going to need to control the clock here to help out your defense, as you talked about. And I think running the ball with Cam Akers, if you do that, you give him the ball 20 to 25 times, I think that'll go a long way to winning this game for the Rams.
Yeah, I laughed a few minutes ago because you brought up the offensive line. I'm like, man, we have not talked about the offensive line that much, and I guess I'll get into it here, going off of your running game. Yeah, you got to have some kind of balance there, where like you can't have Stafford, doing a bunch of dropbacks without his best wide receiver in the game. So, but I am very intrigued about the offensive line. And like, I don't even want to guess who's giving me the offensive line, starting offensive line, because I have a feeling McVay is going to tinker with it now that, even before, like I feel like it's going to be some surprises because uh, it was just so bad a year ago, and you want to make sure you got the best guys out there. And who knows, maybe the Cup injury does kind of play a role into how you want to operate. But I guess it's gonna be Jackson on left tackle. You got Avila the rookie, Havenstein the right tackle. Ankrum inside, and you got Coleman Shelton. You still got Brian Allen as well. So I want to see what Nopum too, and we'll see if he's ready to go. And if he is, with you kind of switch him with Jackson there. So I want to see what combination it comes out with and how they play overall. What's the unit gonna do? Um, some people give the Seahawks credit for their pass rush. Like they're not like a bunch of household names. I do know Chan Owusu from the Charger days. He was pretty good, and he got paid for what he did. Last year, and I mean, yes,
Draymond Jones. They
yeah,
have some
he has
pretty
some
good pass
guys,
rushers.
but
Yeah.
I know Jones is more the inside, but in terms of kind of those typical edge guys, they have some good guys, and they're just not household names. But Draymond Jones was a prize that they got from the offseason, who is more of a pass rusher than the run stopper, which kind of makes you scratch your head, right, for why they went that way. But if
Yep.
he's that good as a pass rusher, then I guess we'll see this week. And yeah, they're going to be tested the offensive line, and we waited this long to discuss it. But if they have problems with that Seahawks offensive line, in week 2, you know who they face? Nick Bosa. So good luck with that, and be improved for week 1.
Yep, but I mean you're right on. I mean, and part of the reason I didn't talk about them is because they're not as hurt as they were last season, and they prioritize the offensive line in terms of their that. We talked about it, 10 offensive linemen. I'm not as concerned as I was going into last season. I do like their that. I know a lot of people aren't talking about their offensive line this season in terms of being a weakness. That's it's mostly being focused on the defense and how young they are, and so that's why I think they'll be better. They won't be great, or but they'll be better. I at least I think so. So we'll see what happens with this offensive line, but unless you have anything else, we can get to our betting spotlight,
Yeah,
Gilbert.
no, I'm ready to move on. I feel like the cats are getting antsy over
Oh
here.
yeah. All right. So the Rams are 5.5 point underdogs, and the over under is 46. Let me before you give me what you think what the right side of this line should be. Let me give you some a little bit of history here. Just some betting stats from last season. The Rams on the money line were 5-12, and the Seahawks were 9-9. Against the spread, the Rams were 6-9-2, and the Seahawks were 7-11. And then when it came to the over unders, the Rams were 6-11, and the Seahawks were 9-9. And then one last thing for you, Gilbert. Maybe this will help you, influence you about how you go here. The Rams are 8-2 against the spread in their last 10 games versus the Seahawks, and have covered the number in 5 straight meetings. And as we talked about at the offset of this episode, we said that the Rams last season kept it close, even though they were without 3 of their stars. So, what's the right side here, and how would you bet this?
Uh, yeah, I don't feel confident about the Rams because the whole Cooper Cup injury here. Uh, and I get that there's some injuries on the Seahawks, but like for the most part, they still got their guys from a year ago, and you would think that's enough to beat this Rams team. So, I wouldn't. I feel confident taking the Seahawks against the spread, but I will probably go still under on the total just because, they are divisional rivals and maybe it's going to be a feel out phase and it takes a while. But I just don't see the Rams generating a lot of points without Cooper Cup. So that's not going to help you when it comes to the total. But I do feel like the defense might give Gino some trouble and then maybe they'll keep it close. But we'll find out when I give you my full prediction right now.
Yeah, I'll say I love trends. I love This is part of the thing I love doing about when it comes to research. if I can find some trends here, I like going with them. I like the fact that the Rams have covered in their last 5 games, so I'm going to keep that. I think they cover here, and I really like the over on here. If it was late in the season, I probably do an under. I just number one, like as we talked about, uh, Sean McVay is 16-4 in September against. Whether you think they'll win this game or not, that's up to you. But he typically starts off well, and so I think that you'll see, right now as the fact that they're healthy is a good sign. Everybody, outside of Cooper Cup, as you talked about, I really like the over on this, Gilbert. And so
Mm,
that'll take us to our game prediction here. And
yeah,
so I'll let you start us off here. I'm really intrigued to see which way you're going here to start off the season.
yeah,
You were a big believer in the Rams early in the season, last season, and then you lost all hope on them. So
yeah.
let us have it.
Yeah, people won't like my response. I get it's week one, but no, Cooper Cup really decided this easily for me. I'm gonna go 27-17 Seahawks beat the Rams. I think you'll see some good flashes of the defense, but I just can't get behind a Stafford offense without Cooper Cup, and I don't know on the offensive line just yet. And maybe it takes some time to gel. So with that, I'm gonna go 27-17 Seahawks over the Rams. So sorry about that, House of Horns.
Yeah, I'm gonna go. We're not gonna agree for the first week. One of the things and we talked about trends. This is the time where nobody knows anything about any of these teams, and so one of the things as I talked about in terms of the trends is just seeing a lot of these teams, especially in division, kind of feel each other out. And so I'm going to go with the Rams 27-21. As I said, I like the over on this game. And I also I like them to win this game. And I think part of the reason I like them to win this game is because I feel like there's a lot of expectations with the Seahawks right now. And everybody's overlooking the Rams right now. As we talked about, there's a big, a parallel between this Rams team and the Seahawks team from last season. We saw upsets last season with the Titans, with the Giants going and being the Titans. Upsets happen in teams that we don't expect to be good. They happen in week one, and I think the Rams are one of those teams who come out and go to the Seahawks, to Lumen Stadium, and pull off the upset against the Seahawks.
Mm, uh, I won't disagree much on the over. I could see that happen, I guess. But we got a cat appearance week
There you
one.
go.
Maybe he
Week
doesn't like
one
my
cat
doesn't
appearance.
doesn't like my pick. But I'm just surprised how much faith you have in the Rams winning this without Cooper Cup, and then also having them. They're minus. They're getting points. They're getting 5.5, and then you're gonna say they're gonna win by 6. That's pretty much like what that's a you being very confident in the Seahawks. And if you would have said maybe like a 3-point game, I'm like, all right, fine, but 6 points, that's a lot.
Yeah. And that'll get us to our next segment here, Gilbert. As you know, I've been bullish on the Rams. I've come out on if you haven't checked it out, I we did a I we did a little short on here on House of Horns that I've added to this channel, and we did our prediction episode on Compas on the Beat, and I said the Rams are going to make the playoffs this season. They're one of my 5 new teams that make the playoffs. And so that gets us to our Rams final record prediction. So I'll start it off just to be positive here. I think I I think I think they now I don't think they're gonna end 10. They're gonna go 10-7. I think they go 9-8, and there's a bunch of 9-8 teams, and they end up being the team that wins the berth.
Tiebreakers.
Yeah, the tiebreaker. So I'm going 9-8 for the Rams this season, Gilbert.
Wow. So now I'm wondering what the what the prediction would have been if Cup would have been healthy week one? Was it the same or the
Probably, I was thinking 10. I was
okay?
thinking
All
10
right.
and 7. And then with the Cup news, I think especially if he misses a couple games, I still like what McVay has. I think they start off either 1-3, with this being one of the games they win, or like 1-3 or 2-2, and they're gonna struggle early on. But I think the schedule at the backhand eases up on for them, and I think that's when they kind of like what we saw with the Seahawks. Although the Seahawks started off hot early, and then they kind of, you know, came back to the I started losing some games towards the end there. But I really I do like their schedule in after the first 6 games.
Yeah, for me, I just want to say real quick a reminder: if you disagree, let me know in the comments. And I feel like everybody was pretty nice. I'm a tough guy. I could take some criticism, but everybody was pretty respectful. Saying, "Hey, you're wrong. We'll see."
Yep.
But also, it could have been like by after week 5, everybody knew the Rams were terrible, so nobody cared if I said negative things about the Rams. So we'll find out for week 1 what people say. But let me see it in the comments if you agree with me or Victor. But now for my negative final record prediction. And I don't want to be swayed too much by the Cooper Cup injury. So I'll give you what I had before the injury. And it's
Hmm.
still going to be not a playoff record, I feel like. But I initially started going into the summer for the Rams to be pretty bad. I was going to say, maybe less than last year, 5-12, maybe 4-13, but I like the rookie class. I think they're gonna be, competitive. They're gonna push and they're gonna fight until the end. And that was the thing that was, when some people really like the Rams because of Cooper Cup, Aaron Donald. I keep saying Stafford, McVay, but one of those guys goes down. Like right now, you're asking a whole lot from the other guy. So that is this concerning part. But they just say maybe Cup is gone for 3 or 4 games, and he comes back, and then it lets Koopa emerge, and Stafford is healthy, and they're gonna go through a rough patch because, like I mentioned, the Seahawks, 49ers, Bengals, Eagles, all.
Eagles, Colts.
So I'm gonna give you like the full summary. They're gonna go into that Cardinals game, and it's gonna be like, do you want to tank for Caleb Williams or you want to have some pride? And I think they're gonna go for pride and win that game, and it's gonna start off the beginning of a 7-11 record. They're gonna fight, but they're gonna miss the playoffs, and they'll have a pretty decent first round pick still because they have a first round pick in 2024. So seven
Okay.
is that no, is that wrong? No, 6. No, actually, I got that wrong. 6. No,
And
I want
11.
no, I want them to have 7 wins. So
So
7 and 10.
7 and
There
10.
you go.
7
I
and 10.
forget all because these stupid
Yeah, I
extra
know. It
game ones.
screwed us up
But that
ever
would have been
since they went
18.
from
So
16 to 17.
7 and 10, and you're going 9-8.
Yeah,
There you
going
go.
9-8, and
And you
make
have a
the
wild card.
make the wild card number 7 as the wild card. They'll be the 7th team in the and as going into the playoffs, the 7th seed. So that's what I have. But with that, Gilbert, we've completed our week 1 preview now, Gilbert. Are you ready for the season? Are you ready to you know get to it? Like how excited are you about this
No,
season?
I am, man. Like for me, like with this new job, I have to kind of keep track of everything. And I'm like, there's a lot of fascinating games and storylines and unknown that I just want to, instead of talking about, let me just watch these freaking games and get on with it. So I feel like for next week's show, we're gonna have so much more to talk about and feel
Yeah.
better about what we saw. Because right now, it's a lot of just like going into
Yeah,
the dark. Like okay, what we don't really know anything. And after
right.
this week, we're gonna really know, and we're gonna say it all year, like we don't really know until Halloween, until
Yep.
Thanksgiving, until Christmas, but you actually know something after week 1.
Uh,
So I like that.
yeah, and we don't need any more speeches from Gilbert, as
Yeah.
he said. We just need to get to the regular season, and so we knocked out this one. So with that, Gilbert, go ahead and close us out.
On that note, ya nos vamos, pues, vámonos.